Welcome to Reading Under the Covers, a romance novel podcast where we chat, fangirl, and maybe even swoon over our latest reads. I'm Francesca from Under the Covers Book Blog, and today we are diving into romance through the decades from a different perspective than what we've been covering over on our Substack. If you're not familiar, on Substack we've been covering the romance genre evolution through the decades, starting from the 1970s, and talking about the different aspects of the genre and how each of those things changed with every decade, whether it was subgenres that were popular, marketing trends, how people were buying, who was reading, who was getting published, how those books looked, what kind of tropes they had, and more. But here today we are doing a behind-the-scenes look at some of that romance genre evolution, especially as it relates to the 2010s and the 2020s, and we're going behind the scenes with a publisher. And for that I have a special guest today, and that is Erin Galloway, who is the publicity director over at Berkley. So we can get a behind-the-scenes look at some of the things that have changed in trends in publicity, whether that it's tropes or subgenres or cover art, and even getting coverage and media attention as well. So grab some coffee so we can do a deep dive into the romance evolution behind the scenes. Erin, thank you so much for joining us here at the Reading Under the Covers podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
So I wanted to bring you on because we are doing a romance evolution through the decades series, and I thought it would be a great perspective to get a behind the scenes look as well. So can you tell people a little bit about what you do as a publicist, like the trajectory of that?
Yeah, well, this is one of my favorite topics, so I'm thrilled to be here. I'm the publicity director at Berkley. I have now been with the company for over 15 years, which I try not to think about too much what that means. But I really love what I do every day because, I always say in its simplest terms, my job is falling in love with great books and helping other people fall in love with them too. And on a practical level, that means, connecting with media outlets and contacts, planning book tours, connecting with, readers and influencers at conferences and conventions. It's really just ensuring that as many people as possible know about our authors and their books.
Taking it back to the beginning, you said you've been with Berkley 15 years, but what drew you actually to romance? Was there like a book that you really loved that hooked you on the genre? And how did that land you on your career in publicity, but in romance?
I have been reading romance now. I don't even know if I want to say out loud how long it's been, because it's been nearly 30 years that I've been reading romance. But I think, what drew me to it is these are women's stories, which are human stories, like stories that anyone can appreciate because they're about the lives we lead, the love that we have for friends, for family, whether that's family of birth or choice, and the idea of falling in love along the way. And I really, really love this genre. And it has certainly evolved, enormously since I started reading and encompasses so many more things now. But I think as a teenager, I was drawn to it because there was always a guaranteed happy ending. Who doesn't want that? The guarantee that no matter how many challenges and difficulties there are, you are guaranteed that the end will turn out all right. We don't get that guarantee in life, but we can have that guarantee in a romance novel, despite all the things that the characters might go through. So that's certainly what drew me. And at the time that I was starting to read, historical romances were still the most popular. So for those that can remember back to the Connie Mason, Shirl Henke days, that's when I started reading. And contemporaries, there were some, but just not as many. And then, of course, as we hit the late 90s, that's when paranormal began. And I remember buying Christine Feehan very early on in her career and going, oh, I've never read anything like this before, and how exciting that discovery was. And of course, I have felt that feeling of discovery countless times since, finding new authors, new subgenres, new twists on a subgenre. There's always something new to discover. in romance. And that's, the thing that I love most about this genre at this point.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I actually love that one of those discoveries was Christine Feehan, and then you get to work with Christine Feehan.
Yes, exactly. I never could have dreamed back when I started reading that some of the authors I fell in love so deeply with would be authors that I eventually, became their publicist. That never occurred to me. But when I was in college, it was a professor of mine who suggested, have you ever thought about getting into book publishing? And reading books was my greatest passion, but it just never occurred to me that that was an option. I didn't live in New York yet. I didn't even know how to break in. And I was fortunate in this case that his daughter happened to be in a Master of Publishing program in New York City. So he knew the university. He recommended that I apply. And it was the very last school I applied to and the only school I wanted to go to in the end. And thank goodness they accepted me. So I went into the program, which was sort of split down the middle. You could either get into magazine publishing or book publishing. And I was sort of experimenting, with each, learning about each in my classes. And it was very clear to me in the first couple weeks of my first semester that book publishing was the only way for me to go. That's what I was going to have to do. And I'm just so happy that it all worked out, even better than I dreamed of.
I think it worked out amazing. I mean, you're probably working at the dream publisher, I would say.
Yes. I mean, it's funny. When I started out, my very first job was at the dearly departed Dorchester Publishing, which was a wonderful experience because it was a very small house. Romance was something they did incredibly well. They also had horror, thrillers, some suspense, some westerns. But for a romance person, it was the perfect place to start. And because it was small, I wore 8 different hats, just like everybody else there. And I feel like I got a really broad view because everybody did multiple different things. And it was nice to see how all of the different pieces of the publishing pie kind of work together. And that set me up well so that about 3 years into my career, when I moved over to Berkley, I was really ready to get very specific on publicity because I knew that that's what I wanted to do. It's just funny that while working at Dorchester, I had sort of imagined winding up at Berkley. That was the eventual goal. And there were a number of people that had started at Dorchester and moved to Berkley. So when I got there, there were people that were like, welcome. You'll be at home here too. So it was really great. I mean, it was all divine timing and it just worked out incredibly well for me.
I love that story. And I also feel like publishing can feel like it's such a large industry, but at the same time, it's very small. Everyone knows each other. So I feel like bringing having that part of your team from before and you're still seeing them there makes you settle in right at home.
Absolutely. I just felt at home right away at Berkley. And I mean, they can't kick me out now. I say that all the time.
They're stuck with you.
Yes.
So I feel like in a publicist's career, there's always the breakthrough campaign that you work on and everything, you hit it off the park. Do you have kind of one specific throughout your beginning stages, whether it was Dorchester or at Berkley?
I mean, there are a couple that stand out for me. At Dorchester, the campaign that probably stands out the most is C.L. Wilson's Terran Soul series that began with Lord of the Fading Lands. I mean, I will be able to reread that series forever. It is one of the most, emotionally compelling, just beautifully written, heart-rending, and then repairing stories one can read. And that was really exciting to launch a debut author that everybody at the company felt had such magic. It was very exciting. And it was probably the broadest coverage I had been able to get up to that point. And then moving over to Berkley, I certainly had more resources at my fingertips. And, in my first couple of years, I was doing a lot of different kinds of campaigns. I joke that back then I had to pay my dues. So they did put me on some nonfiction and, a variety of other things that I will forever be apologizing to the authors that I worked with during those first couple of years because I am not meant to work on nonfiction. I am just not. I worked with lovely authors and they were very gracious with their time with me, but nonfiction is not something I should be working on. So it didn't take long for me to really focus on all romance all the time. And I was incredibly blessed that the timing just happened where I had been at Berkley for a couple of years and all of a sudden erotic romance started to boom. I mean, that's one of those things you cannot predict. You are just in the right place at the right time. And I was. 50 Shades was, of course, taking off. And we had Sylvia Day's Bared to You and the Crossfire series. And that just went like gangbusters. That, and then we had Maya Banks, we had J.C. Burton. We had so many authors that had actually been writing erotic romance for years. And it was such a pleasure to see, you know, the thing that they had been doing for such a long time gain huge, like widespread across the board success. This was the first time that I really saw women's magazines start to cover romance, and I will never forget the time that I think it was like Oprah, the OMAG back then, that was going to include like one of Tara Sumi's books, and you could have knocked me over with a feather. Like now we wouldn't be surprised by that, but 10 plus years ago we were. That just didn't happen that often, and it was really thrilling when it did. If you got a newspaper review or roundup coverage, those were really hard things to come by at that time. It amazes me how far we have come. But that period, that kind of 2012, 2013, 2014 period did feel like magic. There were just so many great things happening. Books were selling so well, so many new people, you know, coming to romance and discovering the genre. And I never, you know, would have imagined that like the next cycle of big books that gained widespread attention would come so quickly. That just doesn't tend to happen. But we had another whole cycle like 6 years later with the Romcom. I guess as much as we like to think we can sometimes you gauge where people's interest lies, it is impossible to predict trends.
It definitely is. Yeah, I completely agree with that. And it's funny because I met you actually in 2011. So it was like early stages of that time period. And I still have to say thank you because I had reached out to you when we first started the blog and getting that email back from you and saying, here's a list of the things you need to do before you even think about contacting me again. And I'm like, okay, this is our little cheat sheet of goals. That got us to where we are today.
Oh, I'm so glad it was helpful. And I mean, you were so lovely right from the beginning to deal with. And I mean, there's so many people that want to talk about this genre. And I do love the number of people that are just as passionate, you know, as I am, as we at Berkley are about romance.
It was definitely a great time to get started also because of all the changes with the genre. And I mean, for me especially was all the paranormal and all the like fun, different trends. Definitely a little bit more alpha than what we're seeing now. But do you think that there is something different in how you were structuring like a campaign then versus how you're structuring campaigns now?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think for us, the things that really changed are, you know, we didn't have the advantage of having mainstream media outlets be really excited about romance back then. You might be lucky to have an author's local newspaper or TV station cover the author. I mean, Nora Roberts was going to get coverage because she was Nora Roberts. But outside of that, you really struggled to find coverage for a romance author that was not online. And it was a thrill to finally see, you know, much more recently, newspapers come to the table, major magazines, the New York Times. I mean, those were just things that, yes, we could have dreamed of 10, 12 years ago, but they weren't yet realities. Every once in a while you might get lucky, but it was the exception. It wasn't the rule. So being able to really approach huge mainstream media outlets, get an author on the Today Show, those are things that are much more recent. And they're really exciting because the campaigns themselves have absolutely broadened. And of course, while me and my team don't work directly with as many influencers now because that's mostly handled by our marketing team. We do still absolutely work with freelance reviewers, bloggers, but I wouldn't have guessed, 15 years ago that Instagram was going to come into being and how helpful it would be to authors' careers. I mean, same thing with TikTok. Like, none of us knew. And it's been wonderful to see the organic reach that books can gain through these platforms. Now, I also have to say that with these algorithms, which are obviously, not run by people who have our best interests at heart.
The bane of our existence.
Yes, exactly. The bane of our existence. That there are particular types of books that are successful as a result of the algorithms that these companies use. And they tend to prioritize, like we all know, they tend to prioritize white authors. And as great as they have been, they are also frustrating because there are plenty of books that do not get the attention that they deserve. But that's where somebody like me and my colleagues come in, because we're always trying to find, the avenue that is going to help our authors. And audiences are just a lot more, I think, segmented is the right word to use now. The days of getting on Oprah or the Today Show or GMA or even a review in the New York Times and that just selling thousands upon thousands of books, it just doesn't work the same way anymore. Yes, they can sell books, but you really need to be meeting audiences in so many different segmented ways. This was not what I learned in grad school about how to do publicity. Let me just say that. And anyone that does go to school for, publicity or marketing, you will learn a lot and you'll get a great overview and case studies. But I really think that the only way to learn how to do this job is doing this job. Like, I firmly believe that.
You have to be in the trenches. You have to really know the industry, but not just from a business point of view, but where the readers are the ones you have to reach. So you really need to, and that has changed. I mean, I can even see that as what they want or how they want to consume the content, or everything.
Yeah, just that one-to-one relationship between readers and authors it has the potential to be so much closer now because of social media and the ways that, authors can choose to interact on their social platforms. Now, granted, there's like a double-edged sword to that. If you really like it and you enjoy it, great, but it can also be really time-consuming. So there are absolutely times, I'm sure, when there are editors going, yes, you're very effective at marketing on your social channels. Where is that next book? So it's
we need something to sell.
Yes, it's a delicate balancing act,
Yeah. Also, because you touched on your job in publicity, and then there's also marketing. For those that don't know, can you explain a little bit about the difference?
Yeah. I mean, one of the sort of old school ways that we used to explain it to people is if it's free, it's publicity. If it costs money, it's marketing. And that's not exactly true anymore. But I think the easiest way to say it now that hopefully people understand is publicity is earned coverage. So that is earned through the quality of my pitching, the quality of the book itself, the relationship that I am building with someone and have earned their trust. So publicity is essentially earned media, stuff that we had to go out there and work to get. Marketing tends to be something where you are paying for a placement, whether that's advertising, particular positioning in a bookstore, the graphics that are created, by our incredible design team that show up on our own social feeds as well as those of our authors. That, even if it's like a booth at, a Comic-Con, that's all kind of functions of our marketing team. For us in publicity, like really everything I do, I'm pitching and I am just hoping that someone is going to respond and cover what I want.
I love that. Let's go back to the 2010s and talk about a little bit of kind of the rom-com renaissance that you mentioned. Paranormal was big because we're going to be exploring the 2010s as I am posting this. What were some of those subgenres or tropes that maybe surprised you? I mean, We know you said the erotic romance was a surprise, but what was surprising of tropes that people were really connecting with?
Yeah, I mean,
or maybe slipping away, things that used to be popular and not anymore at the time, of course.
I mean, I think during that time, in addition to erotic romance, I mean, billionaire romances were huge, of course. I mean, it wasn't that long ago, and it is very interesting to look back on now, because I think what so many readers enjoyed about that particular dynamic was the Cinderella dynamic, right? Like a heroine who typically was in a difficult situation, whatever it was, whether she was working for like a crappy boss or whatever the case may be. This billionaire had the potential to rescue her and improve her entire life. And the billionaire did tend to be what we would now refer to as an alpha hole. Like, crappy to everyone else, wonderful to her, ish. You know?
Very ish.
And I look back on that now, because, of course, I hope we all think about billionaires very differently today, especially the ones with enormous amounts of unearned wealth, making all kinds of decisions for the rest of us that they have no business making. And it's very difficult to reconcile, like, that fantasy when you can see it playing out so clearly in the real world, and it's such a problem. But at the time, I think it was that Cinderella fantasy. Like, the alpha hole character was still fairly popular. This kind of alpha male that had evolved a lot, I believe, out of, the very traditional hero that you had in historical romance in the 80s and into the 90s. And then I think of an alpha character as one that you could permissibly act a certain way in a paranormal romance because you were a literal alpha of a werewolf pack. You were the king of your vampire kind of group. There were so many ways that you could get away with your behavior, if you will. And, I remember joking about this with folks that also read romance back then. If you're going to write a contemporary romance and you want to have an alpha hero, he's really got to be you got to be military, you got to be paramilitary. Like, there were, how could you permissibly act in this way? And notice permissibly I use as a term very loosely. It was more like, how's anyone even going to believe that you're acting this way in real life if you don't have some sort of societally recognized form of authority, which we do recognize if you are, in law enforcement, in the military, so on and so forth. So those were things that were very popular at the time. And it's not that you don't see them in romance now. It's just that the way we view power dynamics now is with so much more nuance. And I mean, frankly, we interrogate those power dynamics a lot more now in a way that's so much healthier, but does, I think, make it more difficult to suspend reality for the fantasy. Like, it's hard for the fantasy to feel fun when you see people abusing power all over the news every day. The other things that we saw at that time that I'm happy have evolved is we saw women that were both strong but also in need of rescue, I think, in the 2010s. And there's a lot less being in need of rescue now. I really like that there's a lot of women doing the rescuing in, the books that they are in. And I think something that wasn't yet in traditional publishing, but was starting to emerge, on the digital side of things, is we started to see a lot more queer romances, of course. And I mean, they could be in any romance subgenre. And to be clear, a queer romance isn't necessarily, about women or female identifying people. I just think in general, we still think of the genre as female focused. And I mean, to our detriment sometimes, because we have probably made certain readers feel like it's not for them. I think that's changing. I know studies have been done and we absolutely have more non-female readership now, which is really exciting. And there are so many more books. I mean, the hope is that everyone is going to see themselves represented on the page. And that's certainly what we're trying to publish. And I know that's true for, so many other publishers as well.
Yeah, I actually think comparing it to now, I see a lot of men reading romance and
Yeah.
even posting about it.
Yes.
And not having that shame that used to be there.
Yeah.
So I actually love that.
Absolutely. I mean, I think these are stories that anyone can relate to because they're about human experiences, all the things that we experience, whether it's, you know, falling in love with another person or discovering things about yourself or creating found family and all the different facets that, you know, romance and love can take in your life.
I completely agree. And I actually love that we have the space to evolve and to, you know, for the genre to just continue to grow and for more people to see themselves in it. So yeah, I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know getting a book published is not super fast and you work at the end of the process, but do you guys from publicity and marketing have any input to the company? When you see there's like a trend or something, is there like a heads up, we should be going in this direction or buying this or publishing that?
Yeah, it's interesting. There are times, many times in fact, where a publicist or a marketer will say, hey, I'm seeing this. And truthfully, the editors are also reading widely and outside of just the books they're publishing, of course, because we all want to know what's going on in the marketplace. So we have lots of, you know, what you would term water cooler conversations, whether they're happening in front of the water cooler or, you know, on Microsoft Teams or Zoom or whatever it is. But yes, everybody is paying a lot of attention to what's going on out in the market. And interestingly, when we get something in on submission, it just always seems to happen where we'll see a few like manuscripts come in all at once that will have a particular theme or element in common. And it's not like all the authors like get on a group chat and decide this is what we're going to write. It'll just be that for whatever reason, it's like in the water, as you would say. This idea that a whole bunch of disparate things are coming together in essentially popular culture that lead enough people to go, oh, you know what would be interesting is if I did this. I mean, vampires, like, it's not that vampires have ever gone away, but certainly they hit their resurgence. And is that also happening alongside, you know, the Anne Rice show, Nosferatu, like all these other things happening? Yeah. Is the Western making a comeback? Yep. I mean, do we probably have Yellowstone to thank for that? Also, yes, in my opinion. There's always going to be stuff that's in the zeitgeist and then we start to see coming in. I mean, it's almost funny to me how long it took romantasy to become a thing, because romantasy is not new. I mean, that's when people talk to me about, oh, have you heard of this thing? And I'm like, yeah, it's been around like forever.
You just talked about C.L. Wilson.
Yeah, we just didn't use the term romantasy. Yeah. And that's why, you know, when people say it's new, I'm like, the term is absolutely. The fact that we are specifically marketing it this way, yeah. But is it new? No. Anne Bishop's been doing romantasy for decades. That's why I think it can be so helpful when you have a term, because people know what to call something, and then they can find other things that will give them a similar reading, like mood or experience, or like the vibes, as the kids say. But it can also sometimes, I think, we can become too obsessed with labeling. I mean, we all know this, but I like to try and look on the bright side of at least it gives us something to hang a hat on and say, here's the thing. And it gives something media to sort of, you know, center their focus on. Oh, okay, if people like something like this, what else can we cover? Mm-hmm. And that's helped a lot of authors' careers. So yeah. I appreciate it when it's useful. I'll put it that way.
I think that's so funny, because also talking about reader expectations or having something to hang your hat on, another thing that has, I think, towards the end of the 2010s and definitely in the 2020s is using tropes more for marketing, because tropes have always been a thing. Yes. But the marketing of a book specifically to the tropes, I think it's a more recent development. And I think it is always helpful because you're getting, like you said, the vibes. Mm-hmm. And from a reader perspective, it's okay, so I like this with that, so I'm going to pick books that are the same. And hopefully I get the same experience. So I think that's helpful. And also covers, I think, help with that too. So speaking a little bit on covers, do you see it, at least from your point of view, certain types of covers, do they help you with how you're going to get placement? Has that maybe like the resurgence of the illustrated cover, was that maybe one of the things that in the 2010s helped get more coverage because it was a little bit more acceptable than hot naked torso?
Absolutely. I mean, it's funny. I think we all talk now about the clinch from like the 80s and 90s. I remember Sarah Wendell saying, it's the "your breath is killing me," pose. At like where the woman is bent kind of in half backward in a position that is entirely unrealistic unless you've been like a 30-year yoga practitioner. And, the hero is like hulking over her in a way that's frankly menacing. And yet I still have some of those covers in my collection. Like, of course, they're iconic for a reason. And, are they the covers we would have today? No. And then we evolved into the torso cover, or what I like to sometimes call like abs, attitude, ammo, because there was always some guy with a firearm, and shirtless, because of course that's how you would run around. I mean,
and decapitated.
And decapitated, like the chafing alone. But those were certainly popular covers 10 years ago. And then when we evolved into the illustrated cover, which was really just like a recycling of a trend that had happened years before in the chick lit space, and yet we, came up with it and did something new. It was because we were looking for a way to do something fresh. I mean, I remember when we were doing the wedding date cover, the editor, Cindy Wong, spoke with our art director, and it was like, here's what we need to do. We need a cover that is recognizable to romance fans and is going to appeal to a reader that doesn't yet know they're a romance reader, and say to them, you should pick me up. And that's what we created. And then we just kept doing it. And everyone else is doing it too. And even within the illustrated, there's been so many different types of trends, whether it's like font heavy or more detailed, like human features, less detailed, very specific time and place, like more just, a couple. There are so many kind of like micro trends within the illustrated cover, but it absolutely gave us more room to work with mainstream media, and those bright, upbeat colors. It could not have dovetailed better with the rise of Instagram. Book as object, book as art, we didn't see that coming. I mean, creating a book cover, it is art. It is, the title of the person who creates those covers, they are literally called cover artists. So it's always been art. But the way, that we approached it and the colors we were using and how you want to make sure that that cover is going to render not just in person, but what it's going to look like as a tiny thumbnail on your computer screen or on your phone. That was just a different way of approaching cover design that's much more recent. But it's been exciting because I think those covers attracted a whole new audience that didn't know they liked romance. I mean, I said for years, there's tons of like wannabe romance readers out there that don't even know that they're wannabe romance readers. Like they just need to pick up a book. If you watch rom-coms, if you watch a whole variety of different like TV programming or movies, mainly just for the romantic relationships, like me on every show I've ever watched, then you're probably a romance reader and just don't know it yet. And I think we captured a lot of those people very successfully. And once they, read and fall in love, they want to keep coming back,
I have seen that firsthand with people that would never read past like women's fiction, and that's it. That's as much as I'm going to get into romance. But then these covers started coming out, and now those people are getting converted into romance readers, and then deep diving into other areas of romance, which was exciting. Right. I really love that.
Absolutely.
Do you have a personal favorite style of cover?
Oh man, I like so many different covers. I mean, in general, I like really bright colors. I like things that stand out. I have never felt uncomfortable reading a book on the subway, but I understand why people might, especially because, look, people can be crappy and gross, especially on public transit. So I understand why folks are like, I'm not advertising what I read. Like, I hear you. But in general, like, I love our illustrated covers. I still love a clinch. I have no shame in that. I mean, I don't think she needs to be bent in half backwards, like trying to crack her spine. But I still do love a clinch. And I love some of the floral cover treatments that I've seen recently because I'm like a big floral art fan. So personally, so I just think those are really gorgeous. And the historical romance trend that was the dress covers, like those just absurdly beautiful, like ruffle on top of ruffle, all the layers, like those gorgeous dress ones that are like dress porn. Like, love those covers. Absolutely.
I love those as well. And actually, I would suggest that the clinch is making a comeback in monster romance.
Oh,
because there's a lot of monster romance clinch, which I really love.
I agree. I love a monster romance clinch, and it's just so fun to look at because you get that great dichotomy. I love a clinch with monster romance. Certainly, we've done that with all of the Ruby Dixon, Ice Planet Barbarian
I was
covers.
going to say, and those are just so beautiful, and they do have that energy of the clinch. So I don't know why it's making a comeback in that genre. I mean, do you have a reason for that, do you think?
I mean, I guess if I had to pinpoint it, I would probably say we want to satisfy the reader curiosity of, what does this monster look like? What do they look like? And in pairing them in a clinch with their humanoid partner, they're sort of like, the idea is for you to see the attraction and the love between them. Because I can imagine, if you're thinking about a book where someone's got like wings or something that's not, a typical kind of humanoid anatomy, there's part of your mind wondering, how do they wrap their appendages around each other? Do they hug? What do they do? Like, I remember in Ruby Dixon's Bull Moon Rising, when the heroines, do you kiss to her minotaur? And he's like, I don't have lips, so no. Like, he kind of like boops her with his, muzzle. And it's really very sweet when he does that because he understands that it's important to her, but he can't like kiss her in the way someone with lips could. So I think that the desire, at least from our perspective, would be to like show the chemistry between them in a way that helps you a little bit to visualize like that they really are in love,
I think that is a perfect explanation for it. So we talked about a little bit the New York Times covering more romance, which, can sometimes be a good thing or a bad thing because they can have some bad takes when they cover romance. But stereotypes in general, as working in publicity, do you think that you've seen some of those struggles evolve? What has been kind of like, maybe if there was a moment where there was something really that you struggle with going through when it comes to how they approach romance, or maybe something that went well?
I think the biggest shift has simply been this earth-shattering notion for mainstream media that romance is worthy of coverage, which it always was. And I think there were a lot of things that went into play, but certainly some of it was the media contacts themselves are romance readers now. We have people that entered the media workforce who already read romance or who came to it because they just didn't have the same level of preconceived notions that their predecessors had. And that they saw an opening to cover romance. And instead of going, oh, I guess we just don't cover that, instead they were like, why don't we? This seems like what our readers are reading. Why are we covering exclusively literary fiction when pretty clearly that's not what most of our readers read? I mean, there was a fairly long period where People magazine covered a surprising amount of literary leaning fiction, when I think most of us would argue that folks who pick up a issue of People magazine are probably not reading deeply esoteric fiction in the evening before they go to bed, right? And the idea that romance didn't belong in the pages of People was like, who thought that was the right approach, And I love that now all of these outlets really see that genre fiction in general, and romance specifically, is very worthy of coverage. And I mean, one of the things I've always loved about romance, this is true of, I think, of all genre fiction, but it's, I think, obvious in romance, is that it's such a litmus test or an indicator of what's going on in society at the time the book was written. And this doesn't matter when your book is set. It can be futuristic, historical, contemporary, paranormal, like whatever is happening thematically in your book or the interactions between your characters, it is going to indicate what is happening in society at the time the author wrote the book. Whether that's about how we explore women's agency, how we explore sexuality, like all of these things are just a little indication of what's happening societally. And I think that's why romance can be so powerful, because most of the romances we see now are both a reflection of the very real world that we live in and a little bit of aspiration, like a little bit of hope for what we could have if we were not in such a trash fire of a world at the moment. Like, I think romance shows us where we're at, but it gives us a little hope for the future.
It really does. I love that about it. It can be uplifting. You can also still learn so much from it because you're learning about other people's perspectives and other people's lives. Even if it's a monster or a vampire, you're still learning things with it. So I argue that it's just as valuable from that kind of perspective as literary fiction.
Absolutely. Romance is an exploration of the human condition and, you know, as Jane Ann Krentz would say, of heroic traits, you know, things that it affirms the heroic qualities that we all want to believe are still like guiding forces, guiding principles, guiding values in human life. And there's plenty of things on the news that would tell you differently. But I mean, I can't remember who said it, but like when things are going wrong, look for the helpers. And I mean, that's true of anything, right? When the world is going to hell in a handbasket, look for people like doing good work. Look for people trying to be the change they want to see. And romance is simply an indicator of, we are going through some struggles and there can be hope on the other side. In fact, we have to believe that in order to move forward.
True. Okay, speaking about the future, and I know we can't predict anything, but let's play a fun game of prediction. What do you think would be like really good subgenres, tropes, anything, if we look out like the next 5 years?
Oh, yeah. I do think we're going to see more dark romance published by traditional publishers. And what that looks like will probably iterate out in various forms. Like, I'm really excited that we're going to publish Ali Oleander's Willing Prey this fall. And she originally released this as a self-published novella, and now she's expanded it to a full-length novel. There's a second book. The moment you read this book, you're going to want that second book. I speak because I know. And what I love about this book is it's a dark romance in the sense that it is primal play. The hero and heroine enter like a contract relationship where she agrees to be hunted in the woods on his private estate. And she'll live there for 30 days. During that time, he can basically text her a 10 minutes run. And it's like her job to run out into the woods and really try and give him the best chase. And of course, when he captures her, they have a good time. And this contracted relationship, like he gets what he wants and she gets what she wants, this great, like fun experience. And he will pay off her student loans at the end of it.
Win-win.
Win-win. And of course, what's fun about it is there is this like taste of danger, but it's all negotiated in advance. Everything that's going to happen, she gets to say, yes, you can do this. No, you can't do that. I do want this. I don't want that. And of course, he falls faster and harder, which is so delicious. And he doesn't realize at first that the entire reason he wants to engage in this with her is because he's falling for her. Not just because he's into primal play, but because specifically he's into her. And it's sweet to see this like high heat relationship also evolve emotionally in a very sweet way between the two of them. Like the way the intimacy builds is really lovely. And I think this is such a safe entry into dark romance for people that if they aren't sure, if they want to sort of like hop in both feet, like this is a great way to say, okay, I can play with some of these elements, see what I like, see what I don't like, because the sort of the stalker relationship that is very popular in dark romance doesn't work for everybody, at least when it's non-consensual, which sometimes it is. And the I will kill for you of, you know, Butcher and Blackbird, or, you know, like the very sort of like Bonnie and Clyde type, those who kill together stay together. I think they're fun because one, they're a safe outlet for rage. And two, they like let you experience what it feels like to be such an extreme badass for the length of that book. So I do think we're going to see more of that like mainstream, probably with clearer boundaries set. And in terms of what else, I think we're going to see a lot more female badassery because, and maybe like feminine rage in different forms. I don't think I need to tell anybody why. I think we all know. But I think we're going to see what that looks like in a whole bunch of like different facets. And what is romantic? I mean, that's also evolved. What is romantic in a partner? It used to be someone that could sweep you off your feet. Now it's someone that will give you a foot massage, listen to you talk about your day, and not give you advice when you don't want it. Someone that will really listen and give support and not fix. I think, you know, we experienced a lot of fixing like 10, 15, 20 years ago, and we don't need it to be fixed now. Like I just read, I love that the line was in the book. I just read a book we have coming up this spring. I know it's so mean that I'm talking about this now, but a book we have coming up in spring 2026. It's called Boots Beneath Her Bed by Taylor Esposito. And there is a really lovely moment where the heroine says something to the hero like, "You're always trying to fix me." And in this case, like there's a literal physical component because of something that's happened to her. And he goes, "There's no fixing you because you're not broken. You never were." And I thought, yes, that is what I want to see from my romantic partners, whoever they may be. Like, there's nothing to fix here. Just here to support you, give you a shoulder when you need it. And I hope we continue to see more of that because it is so affirming.
I definitely agree. I would love to see both of those things. I actually think that the dark romance, like you're saying, with some boundaries being like a good entry level, it's something that I could see getting bigger. I would still consider a Bryn Weaver a little bit entry point because of the humor. I think the humor really washes that down a little bit so it's palatable. You're not thinking, "Ooh, it's so gory," because I'm laughing.
Yeah, exactly.
So I definitely can see that. Okay, so let's talk a little bit of books. What are some of the recent books that you're like really obsessed with, and a couple of upcoming releases besides, you know, if we're not talking 2026, but what are some upcoming releases from Berkley?
Okay. Oh my goodness. It's always, you want me to talk about who are my favorite children. And that's like nearly impossible. I mean, of course, I was so excited to promote Jasmine's most recent release, Flirting Lessons, which is sensational like all of her books, but it's her first sapphic romance. So if you haven't read it, go out and do that. If you're into romantasy and you haven't heard me wax poetic about Sarah Hawley's new Romantasy series, then you haven't been listening hard enough because I talk about it everywhere. But I really, really love the first book, Servant of Earth. It's so special. It's a wonderful series launch. And I just love this notion that the heroine has a reason to be the badass that she is. Like, she's had to scrape, you know, and do whatever was necessary her whole life just to stay on like this side of starvation. So the idea that when she winds up as an indentured servant in the Fae realm, that she wouldn't be willing to like lie, cheat, steal, do whatever was necessary to survive, that's crazy. Of course she would. So I just really love that setup. And by the end of that book, all of the Fae realize like, shit, maybe she's the one we should have been afraid of. And it's, Exactly. So I'm very excited that the next book, Princess of Blood, is out in September. I think that's going to be great. More Ruby Dixon coming, of course, with her second book, Bull Moon Rising, was out last year. Now we have By the Horns. I mean, are you kidding me? These titles are the best. I mentioned the Ali Oleander Willing Prey, which is spectacular. If you're looking for a really enjoyable Western, and you don't want to wait a year, then I highly recommend Danica Nava. Her The Truth According to Ember was out last summer, and in 2 more months we will have Love is a War Song. And of course, Danica's really reclaiming the idea of the Western or the cowboy romance, because she is talking about Native American characters and their experiences, and sort of like the kind of messy millennial Gen Z like adulting period of life where things should be going great but aren't for one reason or another. Just like the adulting is hard stuff. It's so authentically portrayed. So I highly recommend that. And if you want a laugh and paranormal, please pick up Zom Romcom by Olivia Dade come August, because like when Olivia told me that she just literally had a sticky note on her wall that was like Zom Romcom, that was it. It was just like, wouldn't it be crazy if there was a book called that? What would that even be like? How could I make zombies in a romance? And she figured it out. Like, she said that when she wrote the book, she wanted it to feel joyful and funny, and it does. It absolutely does. I mean, the setup is so fantastic, where we have a heroine who's just like very sweet, girl next door. She's like an artisanal soap maker, and the guy that lives next door to her, literally his name is Chad, and she thinks he's just some like random dude bro, so like an idiot. And when a zombie outbreak happens, you know, as it does, she's really worried about Chad, so she's, I'm gonna go rescue him. Turns out Chad's not Chad. He is a very old vampire that is masquerading as this idiot dude bro because he wants people to leave him alone. He's basically just like an ornery, like curmudgeon vampire. And here she comes in trying to save the day, and he's, oh my God, humans, you're the worst.
People.
And like, exactly, people. And they just have this odd couple, battle buddy, can't help but be into each other relationship. And it's so cute and so darn funny. And I just think that if you already love Olivia's work, which so many people do, then they're going to love her very first paranormal. It's just spectacular.
Well, exciting. I hope everyone's putting all those down, writing those in their calendar. And of course, I have to put in my 2 cents for that. What is it? Oleander?
Oh, yes. Ali Oleander's Willing Prey. Yeah, don't worry. We'll get that to you.
We need that.
It's so good.
It sounds amazing. Well, I think that we've gotten a bit of all of the things about the romance genre in the 2010s through now. And I love getting that behind the scenes take. So thank you so much for doing this and for sharing some amazing book recommendations along the way.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Like I said, this is my favorite thing in the world to talk about. I could do it all day long.
I hope you had a great time listening to our chat with Erin from Berkley, the behind the scenes look at book publicity as well, and getting to explore some of the changes and trends from the 2010s and the 2020s, also what we can look forward to in the future as well. I hope that you took down some notes of all the amazing book recommendations also mentioned here, and I will leave those as well in the show notes so you can check out all the books. Don't forget to visit our Substack for the full deep dive on the romance genre evolution through the decades starting from the 1970s all the way through now the 2010s and ongoing. The series is still continuing, so I will leave all of those links so you can check out those posts as well in the show notes down below. If you're tuning in on YouTube, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that bell notification so you don't miss any videos from us, and subscribe for free on Substack so that you don't miss any of the content that we post across all of our platforms. All of the links for all of our socials and everything will be in the show notes down below. But for now, I hope you find something wonderful to read this week, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!